Jet Set Citizen, and today I'm interviewing Benny Lewis from Fluent in 3 months. Hello, Benny.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thank you. So why don't you start off by introducing yourself? Tell us a little bit about your blog and what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So I studied electronic engineering in Dublin, and when I graduated I went to Spain just for a couple of months to do an internship, and I loved it so much that I stuck around and lived in Spain for a year. And eventually I got into learning the language, which I'll get to a bit later, and I started to travel to other countries. And I've actually been traveling for 8 years now, more or less. And just about a year and a half ago, more or less, I started a blog because I decided to change my language learning strategy into very intensive missions, because I was learning languages quickly, but I didn't give myself any kind of public time constraint or anything. So I registered fluentin3months.com and I started blogging there, and the blog has actually taken off very, very quickly, and it's been much more popular than I imagined it would be. And I'm giving people a lot of my own personal strategies and language learning tips while I have my own story. So every more or less 3 months, between 2 and 4 months, I pack my bags, move to a new country and learn the language. And that's basically, that's me in a nutshell.
Why 3 months? Why Fluent in 3 months? Why not 5 months or 2 months?
It's definitely not a magic number. Whatever, some people might have a whole year in a country, some people might have less time and maybe have saved up money, they don't have to work, or whatever the balance is. It depends on the person. So 3 months just happens to be good for me.
So you said work your job. What's your job?
I have actually had over 40 jobs in the last 8 years, 40 different types of jobs. And like when I started, I worked as an intern as an electronic engineer. I did lots of teaching English, of course, teaching mathematics.
In different countries?
Different countries all the time. I worked in a couple of shops, worked as a photographer, in a youth hostel. The reception was great fun and very badly paid. And then 3 years ago, I actually decided, like, I was going all over the place, and my career had no real direction. I mean, all of these random jobs don't actually point to anything, and I wanted to think more practically. So I thought of all of these languages I had been learning, and the engineering degree that I'd studied so hard for 4 years, and I combined them, and I actually for 2 or 3 years was a freelance translator. So I would get emailed documents in French or Spanish and translate them to English, and they would just be about engineering, electronics or something, and then email them back. And that was covering my expenses for the last 2 or 3 years. And then back in May, I decided, since my blog was getting so popular, I decided to try and make giving language learning advice as my new means of income. So I wrote the Language Hacking Guide, and that was a huge undertaking. I put a lot of work into that and released it on the blog back in May of this year. And that has actually, I was expecting just to get a boost from that because I had a bit of a credit card debt, and I was expecting to hopefully just clear the debt, but it's actually been a long-term thing where I'm still earning every day from it. So that is currently covering all my expenses. And I write in the blog very regularly to make sure more traffic comes in, write 2 or 3 posts a week, giving very unconventional language learning tips. I mean, I'm not talking about grammar and vocabulary. This isn't there's a lot of language blogs out there that will just talk about the contents of the language. I'm trying to talk about the social aspect of the language. So because the blog's popular, that's covering my expenses.
What kind of advice would you give in your ebook?
So what I usually in the book and in the blog, I tell people, like, the book is a concise way of getting all my advice in one place. The blog is all over the place. But in both, I tell people you have to speak the language from day one. No matter what you do, if you over prepare, and wait until you're ready, this is a feedback loop of never being ready, because there's always a little bit more you need to do. There's a few more words, you just have to finish another chapter of grammar, and these kind of things are going to hold you back forever, because you're never ever going to be 100% ready. in any language, even in your native language, you know, there's still always more things to learn.
So you're obviously a very outgoing person. That must have a big influence on your ability to learn languages and use languages.
Yeah, one thing people would say is that maybe because of that, my advice wouldn't work for them because they're maybe a little shy or an introvert. But I actually was very, very shy when I started traveling. I mean, I went to an all-boys Catholic school and I studied a very nerdy subject in university. I mean, I was definitely not the party animal at all when I started traveling. But I had to force myself to become an extrovert. And I think that is very important, because if you are trying to learn a language and you're only looking at the details of the grammar and so on, you're totally ignoring that a language is a social means. It's a way to communicate with people. And if you're just learning it like it's mathematics, you know, you're learning all of these theorems or whatever, that's not going to get you anywhere. You need to communicate with the language, with people who use the language. And this is hard. This is very hard at first, because you just feel embarrassed, you're not ready. And I just ignore that. I ignore the voice in my head telling me you're an idiot or whatever, and I just go with the flow,
right.
You know. And it's something anyone can learn. I tell people, you know, if you're not confident, you just have to do, a friend of mine calls it social skydiving, where you just walk up to a stranger and say, hi, how you doing? You know, it sounds very scary for a lot of people, but the first time it is very scary, the second time it's slightly less scary, and then after you do it for several years, you become confident.
So your language guides are giving you a full-time income now?
At the moment, yes. I was very surprised after the first burst. I'm still getting sales from just new people discovering the blog, because it's getting shared on Twitter and Facebook. I still have to work on my SEO. I'm getting a few things from Google, but you know, I just need to put the work into making sure the site is optimized for Google. But most of it is just from Facebook. Facebook sends me the biggest amount of traffic. Just I've got the share button, and more people will come, and then those people, at least one or two a day, will buy the guide, and that's enough for me to live off.
So can you give us an idea of your travel expenses? What does it cost to travel the world?
Yeah, I was a very tight budget traveler for pretty much most of the first 5 or 6 years of my travels. So for me, less than 1,000, I think in euro, of course, because that's the currency in Ireland, less than 1,000 euros, so I don't know how many US dollars that might be.
Maybe like 1,200 US dollars?
1,200 US dollars is everything I need. That's living in a nice apartment, so I always rent an apartment, not a room in an apartment, but actually an entire apartment. If you speak the local language and you know a few tricks of the trade, you can get a very cheap apartment for a very good price.
So $1,200 a month, even in Spain or Italy and countries like that?
Yeah. I was living in Italy. I was living in a town between Rome and Florence. So if you're living in a capital city in the centre and you're eating out all the time, you can definitely not get by 1,200. Right. But if you stay for 3 months and you are charming enough to get the same price that someone staying for a year would get, that's what I generally do. I don't actually pay more for staying for a shorter time. And you do it in the local language. If you try to get anything in English, you're going to pay the English tax, you know. So people see you, they presume you got more money or whatever. But if you do it in a local language, even though it's obvious you're a foreigner from your accent and so on, you can haggle the prices down much better. So this is realistic. I don't think it's realistic for people just speaking English unless you have connections. If you have connections, or perhaps another blogger can tell you exactly where to look, you could do the same thing.
Can you give us some advice or secrets how to be successful online?
Okay, well, I have been following advice from a lot of other people. I mean, I've only been doing it for slightly over a year, so I can't claim to be any kind of expert, but I like to be as social as possible. So some mistakes I see in other bloggers' sites is they'll get some comments and just leave them there. I reply to every single comment, because firstly, this will increase the number of comments when people see that your site has gotten 40 comments when in fact only 20 people actually commented. then that increases your credibility. And secondly, it increases user engagement, and people are actually going to be more likely to comment on you, and they consider their social experience. And I've definitely gotten a lot into Facebook. I write separate posts on Facebook about separate status updates, kind of like the way you on Twitter about you know, things you've been doing lately, but interesting to your particular project, and engaging with people. And I think this two-way thing, rather than just me being a voice saying this is my advice, you know, and just spreading that out to people, I like it to be a two-way conversation.
Okay. So you're not just fitting your Twitter feeds into Facebook? Or
no, absolutely not. I have separate information, because I know the kind of people who use Twitter would be interested in one thing, the kind of people who use Facebook another thing. So I always update them completely separately.
All right.
And I know, for example, it's in Facebook you can send it automatically, but if you put a link in there manually, then you can choose your post picture to come up correctly, and so on. So just definitely user engagement. The comments has been a big thing on my side. I get a lot of comments.
You're meeting a lot of people, talking to a lot of people. How important has that been to your success online?
It's been very important this year. For the first 6 months of the blog, it was just mostly reputation and other people sharing the stuff. But I think meeting people face to face means they become your friend,
right,
and they're much more likely to want to help you, talk about your stuff, and refer you to people. So I think that's very, very important. If possible, you know, look for tweet ups, and if you see a big blogger near you, just email him and invite him for a coffee. I mean, these are normal people. They're busy. I'm busy as well. But when people have emailed me and said, "Hey, do you want to meet up?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" You got nothing to lose just by sending a quick email.
So, will you be traveling for a long time? Any plans to settle down and buy a house or get married, have kids, things like that?
I am currently enjoying my lifestyle. It's lots of fun, it's very interesting, and I feel happy I'm making a difference in lots of people's lives just from my blog. But I don't think I'll keep this up in the very long term. I don't see myself doing this in like 10 or 20 years. But I don't like to think like that, because I only plan the next few months ahead.
Right.
So if I meet the girl of my dreams in the next country and settle down with her, that's fine. You know, like the 3 months projects will end, but maybe I'll keep it up for another 5 years. I really don't know. I don't like to think about it. I don't have a very long-term plan. And I like that. I'm living day by day, enjoying myself, and as long as I can put food on the table, I've got nothing to complain about, you know.
If you had to choose one country to settle down in, do you have a favorite right now that you would choose?
Brazil.
Brazil.
Absolutely Brazil. The people there are the friendliest I've met in the world. They have genuine happiness. You know, I don't really like so much cheesy happiness, like in the States, all of this, you know, thank you for shopping at Walmart, cheesy smile.
Yeah.
I don't like that so much, but in Brazil you feel the genuine warmth, and it's a sunny place. It's not so expensive, and it's just the people. People are the friendliest I've met in the world. But I'll continue traveling just in case there's a country with people even more friendly, and we'll see how it goes. So next stop Colombia. After that, who knows? And maybe someday I'll settle down, but for the moment I hope people are enjoying reading my stories of learning languages and traveling to interesting places.
Well, thank you very much. This is Benny Lewis from Fluent in 3 months, and thank you very much.